From the banks of Dewey Lake, it's the Dewey Pod Monster.
All right, welcome back. My name is John, and this is the Dewey Pod Monster podcast. This is your weekly podcast about all kinds of Christmas bullshit, and we are bringing you one more week of Christmas bullshit because it's December 26th, and we figured, fuck it, why not? With me this week is the host of the Dewey Pod Monster podcast. His name is Sean. And Sean, I was asked to have you remind me why you hate carnivals.
Oh, I forgot that you were going to ask me about that. When we talked about being duped, totally forgot that the reason I don't like carnivals, or like the carnivals that you see like that they set up at schools or parking lots or whatever. There was a carnival by my parents' house when I was young. I was like 13 and I had my first job and I brought some cash with me. And they have those games where you know, they're like, oh, it's $2 to throw a dart or whatever to pop the balloon. And I gave them, mistakenly, an idiot 13-year-old gave him a 20 and they let me keep throwing, and I didn't realize that I was paying for every throw. So that now I don't like carnies and I don't like carnivals or clowns.
So did you get like 3 darts out of that or something?
No, I got a lot. I won a painted, like those painted glass things. So I got a Kiss painted glass thing, and I don't like Kiss. So that was one thing. And I got a black Bart Simpson dunking a basketball. So those are the two things that I got.
African-American? Or?
Yes, a brown-skinned Bart Simpson dunking a basketball.
Do you still have that?
I think I do. I think it's still at my parents' house.
I feel like that would be worth something just on how, like,
bootleg it is.
Politically correct it is.
How bullshit it is? Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know.
Painted
You
glass.
want to hear why I hate carnivals?
Yeah, I'd love it. I'd love to hear it. Fits right in the Christmas motif.
Yeah, this kind of does because it involves retail. One of my first jobs, I was underage at the time, so I was like 17, 16, something like that. I was working at a Target, just pushing carts in the parking lot and stuff. And they did a big summer carnival every year in the parking lot. Well, unbeknownst to me, when carny folks set up a carnival in your parking lot, your public bathroom becomes their bathroom, not just for using the restroom to do what you would expect to do in a Target restroom, but they're like they got their feet in the sink and they're basically bathing inside this bathroom inside of a Target sink. And if you've ever, I'm assuming most people who hear this have been in a Target or your average department store. It's not exactly equipped for bathing, but these people found a way to do it anyway. Like I said, I was young and stupid and pushing carts, so I was watching them like build these rides, and I'm sure it was very up to code. And like the second day that they were running this carnival, the games were on the other side of the parking lot, so I couldn't really see any of that shit, which I was fine with. But the rides were on the side where our store was, and they had the big, I think it was the Tilt-A-Whirl, the one with the big, like, they look like big teacups basically, and they just spin around and like tip you back and forth.
Sure.
One of the big spinning things fell off. I was like, yeah, well, that's all the more reason for me not to like carnivals.
We should why are we even talking about a movie? We should just talk about carnivals.
Just carnival fuck ups.
Yeah, it's a carnival podcast. Christmas. Carnival podcast for Christmas.
Ho ho carnival. So yeah, there we go. Little off topic from us for usual, but who cares? Whatever. What have you been watching this week?
I watched a lot of stuff. I'm going to withhold some of it. Let me look through. Let me look through my list real quick and make sure that I can talk about the stuff that maybe people want to hear about. I watched, so I was sick when we recorded with BP. The day before I stayed in bed all day, I watched 4 hours of the 30 for 30 about Bill Walton. It's a 4-part series, like an hour each, roughly, about Bill Walton. And I didn't really know much about Bill Walton other than the fact that he was annoying as hell to listen to as an announcer. Gave me a bit of a newfound respect for Bill Walton, like all the shit that he's been through in his life, and you know how he dealt with being himself and all his story. So it covers a lot of the stuff, like pre-college, college, pro, and post pro or whatever, being an announcer and stuff. It was interesting, pretty good.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please do.
Have you been marathoning Death Wish movies?
No, but I want to. Because Golan Globus.
I noticed that there were several of them all of a sudden available. I'm like, I wonder what someone's planning.
Yeah, all 5 of them are on there. Absolutely. Yeah, I want to get past 1 and 2 because I hear it just falls off the rails quickly, and I'm looking forward to it, but I haven't watched any yet. What I did watch, I heard an interview recently with Bobcat Goldthwait, and he talked about a movie that he had directed around in the 2000s, like earlier 2000s, called Windy City Heat. And I don't know if you've heard of Windy City Heat, but it's available for...
I haven't, but I like him as a director, surprisingly.
It's free on YouTube. You can watch the cut. I think it's like a I don't know if it's uncensored, but it's like the director's cut. And I think that's how it's on YouTube, living on YouTube. Basically, this movie is there is a guy, his name is Perry Caravello, Perry F. Caravello, I think is his name. He's a comedian. He's friends with Jimmy Kimmel and I think Adam Carolla at the time. And this movie is Bobcat Goldthwait directed it, but he's also in the movie. And what it is kind of like a behind the scenes there. It's this elaborate prank. It's like an hour and a half prank movie where they try to convince this guy that he is up for this starring role in this movie called Windy City Heat that's supposed to be about him. And I mean, it's like a movie. It's not like a reality movie, but they try to make this real movie. And there's just things where like anything that he would actually want to do, they'll swap out with a stunt double. And the shit that he doesn't want to do, like there's a scene in particular where they fill a dumpster. The scene calls for him to be thrown into a dumpster full of manure, and they throw him into manure. But there's a scene where it's supposed to be like a sex scene and he's like really into it. He's really looking forward to the sex scene, and they get a fatter guy as a stunt double to do the sex scene, but they take him off camera, take him off set, and they don't actually do the sex scene. But so it's just this kind of subversive movie. And it starts off pretty slow. It's kind of slow rolling, but it actually starts getting really good, like really funny. And the way to describe this guy is he's a stand-up, but his act is basically like a shtick off of Sam Kinison. So he's like imitating Sam Kinison in his routine.
I'm not even sure I like the actual Sam Kinison, let alone a Sam Kinison.
Yeah, impersonator.
I know that's like comedy sacrilege, but maybe I'm wrong. He tends to annoy the shit out of me.
No, I think that it's pretty well known, I guess. Maybe that's the opinion. The common parlance is that Sam Kinison's first album was like really good. And his first special was really good, and then it kind of went off the rails after that.
I liked him in Back to School, but I feel like all he is a caricature of himself.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's just a real quick piece of his
Yeah, he's only in it for like 2 minutes, and that's about all I can really handle of him.
Yeah, I fell down a rabbit hole on Bobcat Goldthwait. There's another thing that I watched. I think it's on Tubi, and it's called Joyride, and it's a kind of behind the scenes documentary of him and Dana Gould doing their stand-up act together. Well, they'll both tell stories from the road. So I won't get into that one too much. The other thing that I watched is I watched some fight, and it was on, I don't know, ESPN or I don't know, some free channel that comes on one of those streaming services like Freevee TV or one of those like free streaming things that everybody seems to have. Roku has one, Plex has one, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Any in-ring announcer that's not one of the buffers, Michael or Bruce, are just laughable. You really appreciate how good Bruce Buffer and Michael Buffer are, even though Michael Buffer is like a zillion years old. You appreciate a zillion times how much better they are compared to just a regular dude. Or even Jimmy Lennon Jr. is fine. Like, he's pretty good.
Is that the guy that fills in for Bruce when he's not doing the big fights? The bald guy with the Mean Gene mustache?
No, Jimmy Lennon Jr. is like he's kind of a skinny blonde-haired guy, but I know who you're talking about too. The guy with the deep voice that does some of the he's pretty good.
Terrible, but I mean, in comparison to Bruce, it's like, I mean, Bruce is over there like bumping knuckles with fighters and like getting in their face and pumping that. I know Michael is the epitome of that type of ring announcer, but I think Bruce takes it to the next level. I think he's great. If I had my choice of people to announce my funeral service, Bruce Buffer would be like high on the list. Coincidentally, Bobcat Goldthwait would be high on the list too, but he'd have to use coked out Bobcat.
The old Bobcat voice.
Yeah, right.
It's that Joyride thing is pretty cool because Bobcat, he gets into when he stopped doing that shtick and why he stopped doing it. He kind of tells a story about it. He also tells this really interesting story about, and they use footage from it, with Jerry Seinfeld doing Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee or whatever it's called. He has somebody on, I can't remember who it is, what comedian it is, but they talk about Bobcat, and Jerry Seinfeld goes off about how much he does not like Bobcat and how he's not funny and all this shit. And Bobcat kind of says the reason that happened was because he was on Jimmy Kimmel. He directed a lot of Jimmy Kimmel episodes, but he was on maybe it was Arsenio. And he brought up that how Jerry Seinfeld was 39 dating a 19-year-old, Shoshana.
Yeah.
And that really pissed off Jerry Seinfeld. And 30 years later, he still carries a grudge about it. Seinfeld does.
It's funny, like 30 years later, that story still pops up randomly like, hey, this guy might be a dirtbag.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not even going to get into that, like open that can of worms.
Right.
But
hey, we're just talking about what we've been watching. I watched something else much longer much more supposedly highly esteemed, but I can talk about that some other time.
Yeah, anything else you want to add?
No, we got a lot of periphery around the show, so I'll let you talk about your
Yeah,
stuff.
that's true. So after you were sick, almost to the T 2 days later, I decided to get sick.
And we weren't in contact with each other.
Yeah,
No French kissing.
Yeah, none of that good stuff. So I spent most of last week on my back, kind of rolling around, like trying to watch things and like losing interest rapidly quick because I just felt like crap. So I did kind of marathon through that Face Off show quite a bit just because it's dumb enough that I don't really have to think. Like, I don't know about you, but when I'm sick like that, I don't really want to think about anything. I just kind of want to stare at something that moves and maybe is colorful and like be miserable. So I did a lot of that. But I did watch, I found time, or somewhere in there, I watched the movie Air, which came out this year. It was the movie about how they made Michael Jordan's shoes or whatever, or his original one, like how they signed him and all that, which, I don't know. Do you have an opinion about Affleck and all them as, like that whole group of guys
crew?
that tends to act? Yeah.
I don't have a real problem with them. I'm not a big Ben Affleck public persona fan. Like, I don't really like him as a person. Really, but I think he does a pretty decent job as an actor. I heard it was good. Affleck plays, well, Damon plays Phil Knight, right?
No, Affleck does.
Oh, okay.
Damon plays the guy who, I forget his name. He's the guy who actually essentially brokers the deal with Jordan. But so I'm kind of indifferent to Ben Affleck, the person, because I feel like I get the impression that he's a tool, but he for so long was like paparazzi'd in like the worst possible fucking way, and he doesn't help himself like in a lot of ways. But I can't blame him for being annoyed with people in public either. Like, he seems like someone who just has to deal with shit. But when you give him a chance to do something that he actually, like, his, not just this movie, but like Argo was a great movie, and he acted and directed in that. Like, he can be great, but he can also do stuff like fucking Jersey Girl. There's a line there. But this was pretty good. I mean, if you like, again, your guess is as good as mine as to how factual this story is that they're telling, or what's embellished and what isn't. But if you like that kind of story, I mean, it's for an hour and a half movie. I was entertained with it. And then the other movie that I really liked a lot, and the main reason why I want to bring it up is because I want to tell people who haven't seen it to watch it, because we're going to come back around and talk about it in depth at some point, is the movie Deadstream, which is a movie that came out last year on Shudder, a much better movie than a movie that we'll talk about in a little bit that came out on Shudder, or maybe not. Maybe it was crap compared to the movie that we're going to talk about. I don't want to play my hand too much. Basically, just real crash course without ruining anything. This movie is about a guy who's like a internet influencer, and he decides to live stream himself inside this supposedly haunted house for an evening, and shit goes awry, as you would expect in a horror movie. And it is a found footage film, but it is, as far as that kind of movie goes, you don't really feel like you're watching a found footage film. And what I mean by that is it doesn't feel like does it feel low budget? Yes, but it doesn't feel low budget like I shot this on my phone and like I made this movie because this is how I had the way to make this movie. It feels like it's a step up from that. I really dug it. And like I said, I want to bring it up briefly just because it's something I want to go back to. I don't know how popular this movie is. It seems like there's like a group of people that have seen this, and then there's a lot of people that just look at like, what's that? So if you're listening to this, I would urge you to kind of go and seek that out so we can talk about it and actually have people know what the hell we're talking about. The only other thing I tried to do, around 9:30 last night, I put on Five Nights at Freddy's, and then I woke up at 12:09, and I have no idea what happened in the movie. So I guess I didn't really watch all that much of it.
That's usually a good sign.
I think it spoke more to where I was at physically than where I was. I'm not blaming the movie for it, because I literally remember zero of this movie. I think I just literally hit the couch and was out. So I guess I'll have to give that another try. But yeah, that was pretty much it, other than a bunch of random shit that just kind of, I fell in several YouTube rabbit holes, and I can't even entirely remember what. I did watch a pretty cool, it's like a 30-45 minute video just of some guy going to all these different pizza places throughout Detroit, which local interest. I was kind of impressed with that, and kind of like, why didn't he go to blah blah blah, which I guess is a problem when you watch a local video.
It wasn't Dave Portnoy, was it?
Who?
Dave Portnoy from Barstool?
I don't think so. I think the channel name was Munchies or something like that. So I'm not sure. If I can find it, I'll send it to you and we can link it in the show notes.
Sure.
Shouldn't be too hard to find. But yeah, that was pretty much it that was worth mentioning for me. Well, we're going to take a break then. We'll be right back to talk about It's a Wonderful Night. So we are back. As I mentioned, we are talking about the movie It's a Wonderful Knife. This is a movie that came out just in the last month or so on Shudder, but it also got a theatrical release. And we always start our movies with third-party review, and this third-party review comes from Bruce, who is a verified user on the Rotten Tomatoes. He gave this movie half a star and said, that had to be the worst movie I saw in my 60 years here on Earth. That's it.
That's not hyperbole at all. I mean, I'm sure that's 100% accurate.
Sean, tell us what this movie's about.
We go over to IMDb, where we have the plot and the storyline. I didn't pre-read this, so I'll just read them now and we'll see what's different about it. The plot says, after saving her town from a psychotic killer, Winnie Carruthers' life is less than wonderful. When she wishes she'd never been born, she finds herself in a nightmare parallel universe where without her, things could be much, much worse. And then if we go to the storyline, care of Independent Entertainment, it says, set in idyllic Angel Falls, a year after saving her town from a psychotic killer on Christmas Eve, Winnie Carruthers' life is less than wonderful, but when she wishes she'd never been born, she finds herself in a nightmare parallel universe and discovers that without her, things could be much, much worse. Now the killer is back, and she must team up with the town misfit to identify the killer and get back to her own reality.
I guess where to start, is this your first one of these movies that's kind of taking, it's not like a straight remake, but it's taking a old property and kind of throwing some horror movie paint on it and presenting it as like not necessarily a new idea. I think this one especially is like very much so telling you that it's ripping off It's a Wonderful Life. Earlier this year, we had Totally Killer, which I actually enjoyed. I don't know if you ever got around to watching that or not.
I did not.
The same guy who wrote this wrote the movie Freaky, which is essentially Freaky Friday, but with horror movie paint on it, which I actually thought that was pretty good too. And I think there's been several others. Is this your first one of these movies that's been the take an old idea and paint it with blood and see how it goes?
I think of this era, yeah, it probably is.
Okay. Is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? Maybe I'm jumping ahead. I guess we should kind of start with some of the people that are in this movie. I mean, you got Justin Long in this movie because he pops up in fucking everything now. You have Joel McHale in this movie, which is not exactly a selling point to me. And then Jane Widrop, which isn't she in that, what's that fucking show? Anyway, tell me more about this movie, Sean.
I don't know what show she's in because I don't know if I've seen her before.
Isn't she? I thought you were watching it, but maybe not.
Well, let's look at
She's
the
in
IMDb.
Christmas Vacation, apparently.
Oh, Yellow Jackets.
Yeah, that was it.
I did not even recognize her from Yellow Jackets. So I haven't watched season 2. I don't know if she's like a season 1. I'm an idiot. Maybe she's in the whole thing. I didn't recognize her. Basically, what the storyline and the plot said from IMDb, Winnie has a good life. You know, all her friends and everything. The first 15 minutes is basically her normal life. Joel McHale is her dad, which I thought, again, Joel McHale is not necessarily a selling point for these types of things because it seems like he does a lot of trash and things that don't get off the ground.
Because he is trash. Fucking hate Joel McHale.
This is the first movie that I can think of, or the first role that I can think of where he plays an adult. Like he plays a parent. Generally, he does, or plays his age, I guess. Generally, like with Community, I feel like he played somebody that was supposed to be way younger than him. And I think the kind of, I don't know, the thing that they go with for him seems like he's always playing a late 20 to like early 40-year-old, but never has kids. It's never these like serious roles. And not that this is really that serious, but it's more serious than what I've seen him before.
He feels like the 40-year-old that they perpetually cast in like 22-year-old college guy role.
Yeah, like he would be in the next Van Wilder or something. He'd be in Van Wilder 3 for some reason, where he's like,
yeah,
30 years outside of how old he should be for the role. So Winnie she catches the killer, and it's not really spoiling anything to say that within the first 15 minutes we find out that Justin Long is the angel killer, and she ends up killing him after he kills some of her friends. It's a year later. She goes to the pier. She sees the Northern Lights. She wishes that she hadn't been born because her life is just shit. She doesn't get accepted into the photography program at NY State or whatever, New York,
wherever,
some New York university. And her wish comes true. And then she is immediately transferred into this parallel universe where, again, she had never been born. So the killer was never stopped. The killing has continued for the year that she's been away, I guess. And we pick up. She starts to try and reconnect with her family who doesn't know who she is. She tries to reconnect with friends, again, who don't know who she is because she was never born. That's really where the Wonderful Life parallels end. I mean, I can't say that, take this for what it's worth. I've never seen It's a Wonderful Life, like the whole thing. I know kind of what it's about.
I fucking hate that movie.
Have you seen it? Like the
don't
whole
watch
thing?
it. Yes. And I hate it.
Okay. That's more of like a Christmas story thing, right? With
It's
kind of like Ebenezer Scrooge, the ghost of Christmas, blah, 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 right? Kind of.
It's a story about a guy trying to kill himself, and somehow it's been like shoehorned into this Christmas classic because at the end of it, he's like, maybe I shouldn't kill myself.
Yeah.
And there's snow.
Every time
it's a fucking terrible
bell
movie.
rings, an angel gets its wings.
Yeah, it's crap.
So really, that's kind of where the parallel between this and It's a Wonderful Life.
I'm in a good mood tonight.
It's okay.
Yeah,
It's your turn.
for the most part. I want to say that the town name might be the same as the town that's in It's a Wonderful Life. I don't like it enough to remember for sure. It doesn't really make a difference. I mean, this movie, so you've already said something in the 5 minutes we've been talking about this movie that I didn't realize was a part of the plot of this movie. When you mentioned that she goes and makes her wish that she never existed, and you said that was a year after the killings and
Yes.
whatnot.
Mhm.
I thought it was like immediate after the killings. Like I somehow missed that a year had taken place between these, because maybe it's because it happens that quick. Maybe it's because, frankly, this movie's really not that fucking interesting and it doesn't do a good job of telling the story that it's trying to tell. It does enough to piece together the main parts. Like you realize when she wakes up and no one knows who she is, like, oh, okay, she made this wish and now it's like she never existed. She's just this person that's kind of stuck in this weird universe. She runs with it, but she doesn't really run with it in a way that kind of makes sense for why she made that wish in the first place. Like she wishes she never existed and then she gets that wish. Why is she trying to rekindle all these relationships? Why does she just like get out and go to New York or whatever and try to pursue what she was trying to do? It doesn't really make sense as far as that goes. But more importantly, for the point of this movie, is it doesn't really do a good job of making this of justifying its hour and a half runtime by pulling together this bullshit It's a Wonderful Life throwback. Like if this movie was just the first, I don't know, 10 minutes of the movie and then it ended, I'd probably give it like 8 out of 10 hot dogs, something like that. But instead, we get this whole like time shift fucking like mystery whodunit, like, I don't know, masquerading as a bad comedy that never really ties anything together. And did you like anything about this movie?
Man, this is Freaky Friday right here, I think. For us, this is a little bit of a role reversal. You're like, you must have had a bad fucking day. Like I didn't think it was that bad. Do they tell you the 1 year later thing? Does it kind of blend in? Yeah. So when Justin Long's character, who is he's a wealthy real estate developer who happens to be, I think he's the mayor in the first part, like before the time shift.
Yeah, he is.
He's buying up all these properties.
He's the mayor throughout the whole storyline, as far as I could tell.
He's buying up all these properties. He wants to build a strip mall or something in this small town. He's targeting people who own businesses that aren't selling to him, essentially. And when he dies,
almost implied that he's kind of Donald Trump, but they don't say it. He's got a very bad fake tan and weird hair.
His wig's kind of weird, and he's got teeth are like perfect and white.
Yeah.
It almost takes you out of the fact that it is Justin Long because he looks just different enough that you're kind of like, as the movie progresses, he's very recognizable. But at first I was like, oh shit.
I did have to pause. I'm like, is that just, I did a little bit of a double take. I'm like, okay, I guess that's what he looks like in this movie.
But when he dies, because like I said, he is revealed to be the killer in the first 15 minutes, so no spoilers or anything on this. I mean, if you watch 15 minutes of it, in for a penny, in for a pound, right? You're going to know that he's the killer in this thing. And when they flash to, initially the movie starts with this kind of cheesy commercial where he's trying to talk about how great the town is. And then it moves ahead after he dies. Joel McHale and Winnie's brother are now these realtors or something. They took over the business that, this guy was running. And then it's like a year later and her life is shit. Her brother, she gets like a tracksuit or some like pink tracksuit for Christmas, and her brother gets a new truck because he's working with the dad and whatnot. And that's when she's like, oh, life sucks because I didn't get a truck. I didn't get into college and I'm 18 and my life's ahead of me. Whatever. Like no commentary on that. But
sounds like you've had this conversation before.
I don't have any 18-year-olds yet, thankfully, but anyways, so the movie progresses, and maybe it's because I haven't seen all these kind of twists on this kind of old theme. I mean, we do, right? We see old movies remade as new ideas, and they change characters, and they change one little thing about it, and they repackage it, and they resell it as a new movie. This movie, I think my big complaint on this is there's some things that just don't tie together. There's a scene, the killer, for example, like the way that this is so nitpicky, but the way he dies is when he hooks these, like a jumper cable up to him, and it's supposed to fry him, but she takes it off the battery, which is actually powering the jumper cables and all the lights. So where is the electricity coming from, and why can she touch him immediately afterwards? Again, nitpick, but
she also doesn't attach it to him. She attaches it to his clothing, which wouldn't necessarily complete the circuit, thus conducting electricity.
I'm not an
to fry
electrician,
him.
but it seems kind of fishy to me.
I learned this morning from listening to the You Run podcast, because apparently one of them is an electrician, and they explained how someone would die in Jurassic Park.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense. Credible source then. The thing for me,
I'm taking it.
Yeah, I haven't seen enough of these, but I know the regurgitating of old ideas, sequelitis, hero Marvel movies and shit, like up your ass, is like basically what movies are about these days. There's not very many original ideas, but especially in big budget shit, there's not a lot of new ideas because they don't want to take risks. This movie kind of does the thing, but it seems like the parallel, they're just banking off the name of It's a Wonderful Life and doing the little, play on it. It's a Wonderful Knife, but it doesn't really have any relation to the old movie, and that's fine. Like I mentioned earlier, I'd never even seen the original one, so, and I think that's based off of a different fucking movie too, so whatever.
Is it? I thought it was based off a book, but okay.
I don't know. Who cares? It's like from the 30s. Gives a shit. Regardless, go back to everything. Your point is like, why doesn't she just leave? She doesn't have anything holding her down here anymore. And I thought that too. Like, if you want to go to this school, this town is a shithole when you come back. And the thing that I didn't understand is all these people are dying. Like, all these people have died over the year, and 4 people die in like the night that she comes back, which is like Christmas Eve night or whatever. How is this guy still the mayor? Like, all 60 people have died, or 20, whatever, some amount of people. More than 20 people have died. How is this guy still in office?
You know what's fun about that? So, and we've already spoiled this, so spoilers from probably 10 minutes ago now. You mentioned when she kills the mayor at the end of the movie.
Beginning of the movie.
No, she kills him again at the end of the movie.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
The jumper cable part. And
that's at the beginning.
No, it's at the end.
She kills him with the jumper cables at the beginning.
She kills him with the jumper cables at the end, too. And with an axe or something. My point is, she kills him in front of, like, he gives this whole speech, and she kills him at the end of the movie, and there's a whole town watching him give this speech. And she's up there, like, assaulting him and, like, beating the shit out of him and kills him. And none of them do any. No one goes, stop.
Well, they're under a trance or something, because all their eyes are blue. And then when that happens, they're like knocked out of this trance. There's a lot of things, going back to what you said earlier, you said a lot of the things don't tie together. It doesn't make a lot of sense. There are a lot of unexplained things. This knife, the key character of it, It's a Wonderful Knife, they don't ever say anything about it, but it is clear that it is like a focal point of this story. And at the end of the movie, at the very end, when all the credits roll, at the end, they show the knife. I mean, they show like a picture of the knife or a drawing of the knife or whatever, and that's like the thing that it fades out on. There's no end scene or any stinger at the end of the movie to kind of do anything.
Thankfully.
But the knife plays such an important part, but they never talk about it. This trance thing, they never talk about it. The Aurora Borealis, the Northern Lights, and how that ties all this shit together. They never talk about it. Okay, that's mysticism or whatever. I can suspend disbelief. She meets a character in the other dimension, and when she comes back, the person is the only one that remembers that any of this stuff happened. That's dumb. I don't understand how just this one person has any impact. My biggest complaint about this movie, I have 2. Biggest complaint number 1 is that they try to tie all this shit together, and it just ends too flowery. It's too good. It's too nice at the end. It just all wraps up with a nice bow and everybody's happy, and that's not how these kind of movies should end. Number 2 big complaint is that, and probably the bigger crime about this movie, is that first 15 minutes we have like 4 victims, and then the last 10 minutes is like you don't need the part in the middle. Or you chop those ends off, and that you have an hour-long thing that could just be a TV movie. You know what I mean? Or a 2-part, half-an-hour episode of something, like some limited series. It's just kind of it's a kind of a waste in that respect.
Well, it falls on poor writing, which I don't think you would argue, based off what you just said about the plot holes and the lack of explanation and anything, that the writing is not exactly the strong suit of this film. It doesn't do a cohesive job of looping together what's going on in the story, why we give a shit about anything that's going on in the story, and drawing you in. I mean, if it's going to take, I think at the core of it, if you want to take any old title, just It's a Wonderful Life, but make it a slasher, whatever. All you really need to achieve, the bare minimum you need to achieve, is kill some people.
Yeah.
And you can't do it all in like the first 5 minutes of the movie. If you made this movie, and let's just say however you got to it, like every other complaint that either of us have had so far, all you did is that, but you sprinkle in 15 bodies in random ways. Okay, well, you made a slasher movie still. So, I mean, I guess this technically still is, but that's kind of the bare minimum you need to do to make an entertaining slasher movie. And like you said, this movie kind of bookends with the intro is up to where they kill the mayor the first time. It's fine. Again, I think it would be a better 10-minute YouTube clip or something than it is a feature-length film. But it's fine. It looks, the effects aren't to my liking. They're a little too CG for me, but whatever. I've certainly seen worse this year, let alone, over the course of my time watching questionable movies. But there's not enough in it to kind of make you feel like this character's ever really in danger or anything like that, other than being confused, which I don't give a shit about that. Like, she's an 18-year-old girl. Of course she's fucking confused. If she had all her shit together, she wouldn't be an 18-year-old girl, right? Maybe that's a leap, but I don't feel like it's totally off.
Where's your jump to conclusions, Matt? John?
It's back there. There's the humor that's in it is often misguided. Like, it doesn't land, at least it doesn't land for me. Having Joe McHale being your movie is, like I said, an instant. If we're grading on a 10 or 11 point scale, like right there, you chopped off at least 4 points just by having Joel McHale in your fucking movie. And the fact that you don't have him, wait, he does die in this, doesn't he? Yeah, he does.
I don't know. Are we going to reveal that?
Yeah. Fuck it. I don't know. It doesn't feel like it pulls anything together, and it doesn't feel that it's written interestingly enough to even say, we've talked about other movies that we haven't really been crazy about and said, this wasn't great, but there's the bones of a good movie here. I don't even feel like this has the bones of a good movie in it, or like the skeleton of a good movie behind it, or like a good idea behind it. It just feels, like you said, it's an attempt to cash in a name and see how far they can take it, which apparently is working.
It feels to me like there was a much longer movie in here. Again, with the knife, the significance of the knife, them cutting to the knife, them showing the knife. The end just wraps up like they had
possible
$50 left in the account, and they're like, shit, we've only got 50, but okay, just fucking finish it. Whatever, let's just end it. It seemed like there was a lot more there that they've wanted to establish or wanted to explore. Like the brother of the mayor is this, at the beginning of the movie, in the original universe or in the real reality or whatever we're calling it, he's like this kind of douchebag TikTok. I mean, they mentioned TikTok by name, and he's starting like an OnlyFans account, all this shit, whatever. And then in the new reality, because all these people are getting killed, he ends up being the sheriff of the town. And then we see him like 2 times through the rest of the movie and never again. So it's like there's all these little hints or like breadcrumbs of all these things that they wanted to do in the movie that they just never can expand on or never make a fully fleshed idea, because there's like some time crunch or some rush, and things that seem like they're going to be important never are important. It's a confusing, it's cohesive in the way that like it's a story and it's
very linear, but it attempts to be insightful,
very
and
branching,
deep, but it doesn't fill those branches out at all.
It's trying to like punch above its weight, but it doesn't have any power. It's like trying to fight a bigger fight than it's just not equipped for. And it just, to me, like I said, it feels like there was budget constraints or time constraints or something that didn't let it fulfill what it actually wanted to do. Not that I'm ever interested in reading the script to see what the movie was supposed to be, but it just feels like it fell short, and that wasn't the original plan.
Yeah, it would be interesting to, not that I'm going to watch it because can't tell I love this movie so much. It would be interesting to see if there's a director's cut of this, just to see what the runtime difference is, see how much actually ended up on the cutting room floor. Like I said, I don't think that would convince me to give it another try, because then we get into a different problem of I don't like 3-hour movies, but here we are.
Have you watched a lot of Shudder movies before other than Deadstream?
Off the top, I don't think so, but I'm not sure. I truthfully, I don't really think of a movie as like a Shudder movie or a Netflix movie or whatever. Like it doesn't I know that's like the new thing that movies do because they're branded with streaming companies and all this shit. I don't ever really think of that. At least I try not to, because I almost feel like it draws away from what a movie could like. I don't care who the production company is, just make something good.
Yeah, I was just wondering if this is if they're like what the quality is of these kind of movies. This is the first one I've seen, so I don't know if it's
Again, comparing it to Deadstream, night and day. I would go as far right now to say Deadstream is one of the best things I've watched this year. And I realize it came out last year, but I didn't see it till this year. So for me, it's one of the better things I've seen in 2023. So yeah, this, we'll get to it, but it's like in a neck and neck race with Cobweb as far as how entertained I was by this thing.
so speaking very highly of it.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot positive to say about this movie, really. Like, I could just shit on it, and I will get to that a little bit more. But if you're asking me, like, my opinion of the quality of, like, Shudder movies, this would not be the one that I use to judge that. I don't think this is a accurate representation of what they can produce.
I was just wondering more so along the lines of, as we've mentioned in previous episodes, and we talked about one last year around this time, I've watched a lot of Hallmark movies. My wife loves the Hallmark Christmas movies and Lifetime Christmas and all these things, and that's kind of like what they do, you know, around this time of year, is they put a new one out every year. And I know Shudder obviously is a service that's primarily horror movies, right? I don't know if they do anything else. I just wondered if they're regarded with the same kind of, I don't know, fanfare or whatever. Like Hallmark movies, they're all the same. You know, they all have this variation of a story. And at the end, the woman who comes back to her hometown meets up with the man of her dreams, and they know each other for like a week, and they're in love, and they get married and live happily ever after. I just wonder if these movies are kind of like, there's not a lot of substance to them. You know, you just kind of, I'm kind of interested in horror movie, I'll turn this on because it's on Shudder and it's out. I just wondered if it was they had the same kind of reputation.
Just doing a quick search on original Shudder movies, looking at a lot of these titles, no, I haven't seen the majority of these. Again, the two that we've already mentioned are the ones I've seen, but Speak No Evil is one of them. And when we talked with Jordana on her show about some movies that actually scared us, that was one that she brought up that you looked intrigued by. Host is one that she's brought up. So Jordana's recommended quite a few of these movies to both of us, actually. So that's, again, that is actually a vote of confidence. I guess they have the new Creep Show TV series that they're doing. That's a Shudder original.
Okay.
Which I haven't watched that, but I love the original movie, so I've wanted to watch it. I just never got around to it. Skinamarink is a Shudder original, so that's another one of theirs. So yeah, they've I don't think this movie speaks to the quality. Just looking at these titles without reading off a list of what looks like 30 films or so, what I do know is these are all very different types of horror movies.
Okay. So I wanted to ask you one other question about this movie. What did you think of the killer's design or outfit or whatever?
It was okay, but kind of boring. It was almost like an inverted ghost face, but without any detail on the actual face. I guess if you're going to set a movie in like winter and Christmas and whatnot, wearing all white makes sense because you're going to blend in a lot more than if you were wearing practically any other color other than maybe red or green. It would have looked silly if he was dressed up like some kind of ghost face version of Santa, and I'm saying ghost face for lack of better wording. I wasn't overly like impressed with it. Like if I were dressing up for Halloween, this wouldn't be anywhere on my like Halloween costume list, but I wasn't like turned off by it either. Like it didn't distract me or take me out of it, that I was indifferent to it.
So just to describe it, it's like you said, ghost face, flowing robes basically, but white instead of black. And the mask is just a white mask that's kind of contoured to look like a general outline of a face, but there's no real detail at all to it. So
yeah,
I just wondered, like, it happened near the end where this angel, or I think that it's just the angel, is killing all these people, and it's all white, and there's like never any blood on it, which I thought was really interesting until the end when the person in the suit gets theirs.
I had the one scene with the axe where it had some splatter on him.
But that's like the end, near the end.
He's got like the best dry cleaner on the planet, because whenever you see him again.
Yeah, or he has several outfits.
Yeah, I guess that's logical too.
And not to get too into detail on what happens, but I was really kind of expecting to see a multiple killer, aka Scream aspect
Yeah, I was actually surprised that didn't come up, especially when you get to the point where they start doing reveals in the second half of the movie. I was really expecting there to be more than one killer, and actually kind of relieved that there wasn't, because we talked about Sick earlier this year, that movie.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if you had the same thought, but as soon as they revealed the second killer in that movie, I'm like, of course there's two fucking killers. Kevin Wilkinson wrote this fucking movie. Like that shtick is so used up. If you're not Scream, and even in Scream, it's used up in that franchise too. But if you're not in that franchise, it's like, all right, just fucking cut it out. Either have like 40 killers or one. Like, we don't need the whole multiple killer thing anymore. Or at least I don't need it.
Either be Invasion USA or be Friday the 13th. Got it.
Yeah, exactly. Got anything else you want to add before we kind of start hot dogging it up here?
No, let's wrap.
All right. You want me to kick us off?
Sure.
Plain and simple, fuck this movie. This movie is boring. It's uninspired. It doesn't deliver on being a Christmas movie, a comedy movie, or a horror movie, which is what it touts itself as. The kills are uninventive. Basically, every kill is just a simple, like, guy gets stabbed, falls over. There's no real anything in this movie that you haven't seen. The characters are boring and undrawn out. They're uninteresting. The writing's bad, and the effects are nothing spectacular. The only thing that I will really give this movie credit for is I'm starting to feel like we're getting a second generation of like lackluster slasher movies that are just popping up randomly. And there's a part of me that likes that, because that's where you start finding weird gems in movies that aren't necessarily great, but they're a slasher movie and we watch them anyway. Movies like The Mutilator or something like that, no, this is not a great movie, but it falls in the genre that I want to see. So it's got that going for it. On the hot dog scale, I would give it 3. I would give it 3 Justin Long bad tan job hot dog skins out of 10. I don't know. Get out of my Friday the 13th, something like that. This is one of the least entertaining movies that we've watched for this show, in my opinion. Like I said, it's in the dregs of Cobweb. Even the stuff that we watch in Crummy Movie March, yes, even your Black Devil Doll from Hell, I would put on well over this, because this movie is just, it fails at all the things I want to see in a movie.
So you're saying you liked it?
Loved it.
Wow. I did not expect to hear you say that.
All right.
And I don't know what I was expecting to hear you say, but I was not expecting you to absolutely despise the movie and say it was the worst thing we've seen this year. So
I said it's up there. I
don't
don't want to. It's in the dregs.
It's in the bottom
2 at
something,
least.
2%.
Yeah.
4%, whatever. So for me, I have a little bit of a different take. I thought it was a kind of an interesting take on It's a Wonderful Life. It didn't really have much to do with the movie, but again, kind of a cash in on the title. And hey, got us to watch it right after we should mention that John Isberg is the one that kind of brought this up and brought it to our attention. So John, if you're listening, thanks for bringing it up. This John hated it. But for me, I thought that it plays, I don't know, the way it plays out with those 15 minutes at the beginning to set it up and the 10 minutes at the end to kind of wrap it up. It wrapped it up a little bit too nicely. Like I said, I thought that there must have been way too much cut out of this movie to make any of the other things make sense, like the knife and the trance that they put all the townspeople in at the end didn't really make any sense, because none of that was actually in the movie. But I thought that because it was so short, it did help with pacing. The movie felt like it moved along pretty well, but it made it also feel like a TV show. Like it didn't need to be a full movie. It could have just been a TV show, and I'm not really a fan of that. Like if it's going to be a full movie, just make it a movie. I think that John's a big fan of this, and I'm generally not a big fan of this, but I felt like this was a perfect kind of turn your brain off kind of movie, because you didn't have to follow anything. You could have just caught it at any point, and it would have been like, oh, okay, this guy, he died. He dead. Okay, next person, they're dead. So if that's what you're looking for, I think this movie fits into that slot, but I don't think there's a whole lot of depth to it. It didn't, there were so many like little plot holes and weird things that happen. Whatever. It's fine. I mean, it's fine. I'd give it five Santa sucks balls out of 11 hot dogs for me. I mean, it's not the best thing I've seen, but it's definitely not. I wouldn't say it's as bad as Cobweb. And I think that's just because you've been hammering that into my head that Cobweb was one of the movies that it did not like at all this year. And I remember not liking it at all, but I don't think it's quite Cobweb bad. but it wasn't great. Like, I don't feel the need to watch this again. But like I said, if you're just sitting, turning something on and you're like, something needs to be on in the background while I wrap gifts or while I take a shit or something, and I don't want to hear my own grunting, this is perfectly fine for that.
Yeah, no, go watch
High
Silent
standards.
Night, Deadly Night 2. It's garbage day. This movie belongs. Just go watch that. It's a much better piece of shit movie. So, with that, we now turn to you, the loyal audience, and we asked the question of the week. And this week's question of the week was a pretty simple one, kind of playing off the. I'm going to go ahead and call it a trend because, again, there's at least 3 of them, and I think they were all written by the same guy, where they're taking these old concepts and kind of rewriting them to be a horror movie of some kind, whether it's a slasher or other. So the question of the week is, what classic film would you like to see remade into a horror movie? So this was asked, and a lot of people ran with the Christmas theme, and that's cool. We weren't necessarily looking for just Christmas, but whatever you want to do, we're here for it. To kick us off, we're going to go over to X, and we're going to go with Pearl, who is at HissyFaceX, and she had the audacity and the gumption to actually record a response. So we're going to drop that in and let you hear that, and then we will read the rest of your responses.
Hi, friends. I wanted to answer John's question of the week, and it's, what classic Christmas story would you remake into a horror flick? And my obvious go-to was Home Alone, but like maybe Kevin is grown up and he's had some trauma and he gets to fuck up the wet bandits for real. And then my other answer was A Christmas Carol. That's the one with the ghosts and going back and forth in time. Well, in my version, it's a revenge story, and the guy in the long pajamas gets to go back in time and fuck up people, and then he gets to go forward in time and fuck up some people, and then present day, it all gets wrapped up in a nice little bow, and there's lots of blood and guts and boobs.
So what she said with the Home Alone, like as a murder movie, I kind of like the idea of Home Alone meets Violent Night meets Saw. That's pretty much what you would end up getting, and I'd watch that.
Yeah, no arguments here. That sounds like fun.
Absolutely.
We kind of got a little bit of it in Violent Night, but it would not be bad to see the full thing. I just don't. There couldn't just be 2 wet bandits, I don't think, unless they're like the killers.
I also would love to see, what is Macaulay Culkin now, like 40-ish? Right around
Yeah,
there,
probably
40,
late 30s,
45,
early
something
40s,
like that.
yeah.
I'd like to see him doing this to 90-year-old Joe Pesci and like probably 95-year-old David Stern. That would kind of make it even
I think
funnier.
Joe Pesci's
So,
the older one.
whatever. Either way, they're not young.
No.
I don't think they're putting up much of, well, Pesci probably would still put up a fight. I don't know about David Stern, but.
Daniel Stern.
And then
David Stern was the old
Daniel
NBA
Stern.
commissioner. And he's dead,
Yeah.
I believe.
Yeah,
He's definitely
close
not
enough.
putting up a fight. Unless
just
it's Weekend at
resurrect him
Bernie's.
for the movie Weekend at Home Alone.
There you go.
Well, that kind of wraps into the other movie that she had talked about being A Christmas Carol, which the idea of doing the Christmas Carol as like a straight horror remake, like I've seen so many remakes of A Christmas Carol that's one of those stories that unless you're a Muppet, I kind of don't really need to see you again. But if you're going to do it, to quote Pearl, with boobs, guts, and gore or whatever she was in blood, I mean, how bad could it be? It couldn't be any worse than this fucking movie we talked about today, right? Some of your other responses. So Kevin and Jason at KJ and a podcast said, the computer wore tennis shoes. The basic premise to bend it to darker version. Dexter learns and recalls serial killer knowledge and becomes one himself, but more violent and harder to track. It could work. So I asked him, I was like, the computer wore tennis shoes. Is that a movie? Which is,
It is.
Have you heard of this?
I have.
Okay. I
Yeah,
hadn't
Kurt
heard
Russell.
of it. So he gave a little bit of an explanation on it. Do you want to give a 5-second crash course on what the movie is or no?
No, I don't remember enough about it. I just remember, I know that they're in it. He's in it.
It's a comedy sci-fi movie that came out in 1969 with Kurt Russell. I don't remember this one. Our friends over at Dissect That Santa, also at Dissect That Film, they mentioned, I would love to see a horror retelling of The Wizard of Oz. That would actually be a really cool opportunity to see like a really like, not the Sam Raimi one, like a truly dark, like creature feature version of Wizard of Oz. I could see that being really fun.
Haven't you ever seen Return to Oz? Isn't that what that is?
The one Michael Jackson in it?
No, that's The Wiz.
Oh,
Return to Oz is the Feruzia Balk. I think it was Feruzia Balk's like an original like debut.
dude,
her debut. And that's one that
it's been like forever.
is like nightmare fuel if you've seen it at a certain age. I've never seen it, but I know it's supposed to be like a dark Dorothy comes back to Oz and all that stuff, and the flying monkeys are like horrific, more horrific than they were in the original.
Is that where they introduced the character Jack Skellington? Didn't that have like a tie to one of those movies?
Oh, I have no idea.
Oh,
I just know the Tin Man looks really weird. Like all the characters look really distended and weird and not the original designs. And I think that's probably part of what is Nightmare Fuel. Maybe we'll watch that for one of these things. I've always wanted to watch it and I haven't seen it.
Sounds like it could be fun. We'll put that down for future reference. Just Jody at Just Jody Hart said Drop Dead Fred, which I don't even remember that movie, but okay.
Phoebe Cates, Rick Mile from The Young Ones. He's like the imaginary friend.
Let's see. At Other Stories 123 said, I would like to see Back to the Future where Marty has to go back in time to fuck up some racists from the 50s. I mean, that's basically Inglourious Bastards, but okay. At Sean Benoit 9 said, perhaps a combination of Christmas Vacation and Falling Down, where Clark gets so disillusioned by his Christmas not working that he goes out on a murderous rampage. Sorry, my answer sucks in comparison.
No, that's not a bad idea. I could see that happening. He's almost,
Right.
four flushing his boss. He's almost into that. He's almost there.
I mean, he gets there. Our friend over at Pop Culture Reflections Podcast, or Pop Cult Ref Pod, says Scorsese's king of comedy. In this horror remake, Rupert Pupkin is a serial killer who does an awful 1-hour comedic monologue to his tied up and gagged victims before killing. Have you ever seen King of Comedy?
I haven't. I've heard a lot about it, but I haven't seen it.
It's a great underrated movie, and I was talking about with him. If you saw the Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie, which I'm assuming you did,
I have.
there's a lot of like vibes from that movie in it, but it's a really dark Scorsese movie that just it's in this like weird corner because it's not a gangster movie. Definitely recommend anyone who's listening to this, or if you're Sean, that you check it out. It's a great movie. Let's see. Smash Trivia John at Smash Trivia John said Project Elf. I know it's not really a classic, but it would be a good horror comedy where Elf is on the run hiding from the terrifying US government. Niz at Nizinski says Dumb and Dumber OG Harry and Lloyd go on an adventure to find love. Harry's girlfriend gets sick and a zombie virus breaks out. Now we have Dumb and Dumber with Jim Carrey, Jeff Daniels trying to survive a zombie apocalypse while they can't even wipe their own ass.
A couple bumblers through a zombie apocalypse. That could be pretty good.
Honestly, if you could recapture the genius as the original Dumb and Dumber movie, not the sequel,
Not
the
Dumberer
original
and Dumberer.
one, yeah, or the one with Matt Damon and the other guy. I don't even remember. Not those. Go for it. At Leighton Confused has chimed in and said, good question. Maybe it'd be fun seeing a movie like The Night Before turned into a murder mystery. Like after the night of hard partying, a group of friends wakes up in their hotel room to find a dead body, leading them to try and find out who the killer is. Didn't they make a movie like that with Jeremy Piven and David Stern? Very Bad Things.
Daniel Stern.
Daniel Stern, whatever.
I'll keep flip-flopping them and totally confuse you.
She follows up and says, oh, wait, you said classic film. Sorry. Bell, Book, and Candle would be fun to be spun into a horror movie, as it seems to have that air, except make it more horror. The witch's love spell goes wrong and it kills the object of one's affection. At Oddcast N says Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer starts the same, but Rudolph snaps from the bowling and becomes a slasher killer and kills off all the others. Finale would be him ending Santa flying off to deliver his deadly presents to the world.
Isn't there a Rankin Bass parody? Like someone did a parody of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer where he is a killer or something? Or is that something? Am I thinking of
I
something
gotta
else?
think that's out there somewhere on YouTube or somewhere that's been done.
That's
but-
like a Spike and Mike twisted animation thing.
Yeah, something like that. At King Freak 1986 said, I'd make a Muppet Christmas Carol into a horror film where all the Muppets are twisted versions of themselves. You can't go wrong with Muppets.
No, I think that's a great idea. I'd love to see Muppets killing some people.
Yeah, why not? This is one of my favorite responses. Rick Chard Void said, Billy from Silent Night, Deadly Night visiting the Hallmark Channel for a week of programming.
I agree. As a veteran of the Hallmark movie wars, I would love to see this happen.
It's one of my favorites. All right. So thank you for all those over on Twitter. And then we have one more response from our friends over at the You Run podcast. Scott replied on Instagram and he said, let's keep it festive, and said Jack Frost. I asked him if he was referring to the non-murder snowman farm. He goes, no. Full murder version. I want a remake of the most sexist, inappropriate snowman ever put to screen. I also want them to make it relevant to 2023. So doubling down on murder snowman. Sorry, BP, your fellow countryman has betrayed you.
Didn't Michael Keaton star in some Jack Frost movie, but it wasn't the horror one, obviously.
Yes. Yeah, it came out like the same year too. or
Weird.
right around the same time as the first.
Perfect timing.
The second Jack Frost movie is one that we're going to have to subject BP to next year at Christmas because he hated the first one so much. And the second one is just pure like acid trip crack, like bad horror movie, like gold.
I just love passing the pain off to someone else, like painting it forward, so to speak.
Join us. Sean, do you have an answer to this question? A movie that you would, or a classic movie that you would like to see remade into a horror movie?
I don't know if it's a classic, but I think touching back earlier, I would love to see Weekend at Bernie's as a horror movie, and maybe Bernie's like a zombie and he turns people into zombies and shit. But they only move when music plays, but they don't know that. You have to have steel drums going for the zombies to start coming after you and shit, but they don't know that. And it's like, oh no.
I mean, I'd be okay with that. So honestly, any excuse to bring back Weekend at Bernie's, I'm kind of okay with. Do I have a classic movie?
You know what movie would be real fucked up if it was a horror movie? Mannequin.
Well, yeah.
I mean, Mannequin scare the shit out of me anyways, because it kind of goes along with the doll thing. But like, if you weren't looking, like you turned your back on a mannequin and it came to life and would come after you and shit, that would freak me the fuck out. That would be one of the most terrifying things I would ever see.
It's pretty fair. So I do want to say, anyone who has said Muppets in a horror movie, I don't care what the premise is, a Muppet horror movie is something I would 100% be on board for. And you can apply that to any form of Muppet, be it, the traditional Muppets, Labyrinth,
Dark Crystal.
Yeah, that one. Any of those. That'd be great. I would also be a big fan of seeing any of the old, like Fred Astaire and Bing Crosby dance movies where they just tap dance around and shit.
Oh, Ginger Rogers, yeah.
Yeah, or Holiday Inn.
Singing in the Rain of Blood.
Any of that shit. I want to see it doesn't basically just have the same movie except have Jason show up and just stack people
Myrtleize them. Have you ever seen Meet the Feebles?
It's been a long time, but yes. It was very cracked out. It's Peter Jackson, right? Like pre-Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Muppet. Yeah. It goes along with the Muppet theme.
Those Muppets fuck, don't they?
I believe they do, yeah. I think one of them has syphilis or something.
Yeah. I haven't seen that in a while, but I remember being moderately entertained by it.
I hated it.
Oh.
But, yeah.
Well, that's good.
Tastes change. I think it's one of those things where someone's like, oh, I got this movie, gotta watch this movie. And then you sit there and you get all hyped up for it. And then when you watch it, you're like, I hate this. Why are we still watching this? I
might feel that way if I rewatched it, because any of Peter Jackson's pre-Lord of the Rings stuff that I've rewatched, I'm ready for someone to get mad at me. I don't really like Dead Live anymore.
I never did.
It's too over the top, leaning into the British comedy into a horror movie, which I'm not necessarily against British comedy, but the way they do it in that movie, it beats you over the head. And I don't know. I got over it pretty quick. I can't watch Bad Taste anymore, so I have a feeling Meet the Feebles might not hold up. And now that I've said that about British comedy, you know what would be a fun movie? I'd like to see Life of Brian remade, keep the comedy intact, but have Jesus running around actually trying to kill Brian and offing people on his way to get to Brian because he's trying to take his shine away.
He could say, I kick ass for the Lord.
Yeah, I'd rather him not.
Isn't that Brain Dead or Dead Alive? Isn't that?
Yeah.
Okay. I was
same movie.
Trying to be clever.
We're calling it.
Yeah.
I think it's Dead Alive here. Yeah, anything else we want to touch on in this? I feel like we've gone a little long for a movie that sucked ass.
For a movie that you hated, we went pretty long. No, I'm good. I think I've said my piece on it.
Well, in that case, if you would like to follow us, we would greatly appreciate it. You can follow us anywhere. We are at Dewey Pod Monster. If there is a social network out there, that's how you're going to find us, is looking for that. Have some gumption. Take the time to send us an audio message, send us a video, whatever. We will find a way to include it in the show. We would greatly appreciate it. And thank you, Pearl, for taking the time to do that. That's awesome. We want to try to get more interaction like that. So it's great to see that happening. Additionally, you can find all our old episodes. It is at crap.town or wherever you get your podcasts. You can always scroll back and find those as well. Sean, what do you got going on? What else do we need to talk about?
I just want to say thanks to all the fine folks who left messages on X, aka Twitter, and all the social media on our question of the week. If you want your answer read on the question of the week answer, feel free to respond. If you have feedback on the show, if you have feedback on this episode or any episode, hit us up on social media. Like John said, find us at craft.town. That is a website. And if you're interested in my craft beer adventure, you can find me at youtube.drafttherapy.com or on all the social media networks at Draft Therapy.
So that's it. Have fun. It's a wonderful night. Fuck off. We'll talk to you next year.